G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to the Rundown Under with Mags. This is my monthly video series where almost monthly video series I should say, where I basically rattle on about what's been going on over the month, both in my personal life in regards to the channel and in regards to greater things within the game community, particularly the spheres that I am involved in. Now, I did say that this year they would be every month, and I did miss February, but it wasn't by accident. I didn't forget. February is kind of like the hangover after a 3-day bender. You have your holidays through the Christmas holiday period. January, the holidays tend to extend into, and everybody's still having a good time. It's almost like the after party, and then you hit February, where nothing happens. I jumped February because I basically did nothing in my personal life. There was no major patch releases or major game releases that really worked with what the channel sort of does here. And there wasn't really a whole lot to talk about, but thankfully we are now in March and well on our way to April, so we've got a few things to discuss today. So first things first, on the personal side of things, a couple of days ago, a good long-term friend of mine who I've never actually met in person finally came down to visit, Grievous, who most of you know from my War Thunder videos, my long-term wingman. He's flown with me in War Thunder, he flies with me in IL2, he is the head moderator for my Discord server. He has managed to escape Poland and has come down to Australia for a holiday. We picked him up at Tullamarine a few days ago, and it was actually kind of an amazing experience. He is exactly what I pictured him to be, and a fantastic bloke too. He really is great. But there was also a few other things that were going on. I'm sure most of you are aware at this point that Wi-Fi is enabled on most aircraft, domestic and international flights these days. And as I just said, Grievous is the head moderator for my Discord, so during the earlier part of his flight where he had access to the early Wi-Fi, he was actually doing moderation work from, 35,000 feet at Mach 0.87. Just working away on the Discord as he normally would. And then as he was coming into Tullamarine, before they shut off the Wi-Fi for landing, because they turned it off at that point, Deadmeat and I were just sitting at the international terminal waiting for his plane to come in, chatting with Grievous why he was in flight on approach into Melbourne, as if it was just any other day chatting to somebody on Discord. It was actually really amazing. The days of somebody coming in for an international flight and you're wondering whether or not they actually got onto the plane, or the person on the plane wondering whether or not somebody is actually going to be on the ground waiting for them, they're as good as done. We can just sit back on Discord and have a conversation, and the only time that the Discord actually got shut off, or the Wi-Fi got shut off, was just during the landing approach and obviously the wait for somebody to go through customs. So yeah, that was really cool. So there will be some Grievous live on the channel coming up very soon. The first one is probably going to be in April. Deadmeat's birthday is in April, just a reminder for everybody to annoy the hell out of him for it when it comes up. Exactly the same as last year. I'll be going up to his place, we're getting on the piss, we're probably going to do a live stream or two. Last year's was right when Gaijin was doing the April Fool's event. It felt right in then. It's probably going to be a little bit after April 1st this time. But anyways, it will be somewhere in April. We'll be doing a little bit of a get-together, and yeah, we'll be all on live talking shit and drinking and playing games, and we're probably going to do a Rundown Under live type thing. I've been talking for a while now about turning this into a little bit of a podcast. Seems like the appropriate time to do it, doesn't it? So, anyways, today's Rundown Under is actually going to be a little bit of an analytical one. We are going to be talking about War Thunder. Now, today's particular discussion actually stemmed from a conversation that I started having in the comments section of a video called Where Are All the Players by the Scottish Koala. The Scottish Koala is a subscriber of mine. He also has his own small YouTube channel. He's actually very good. I suggest you check him out. I'm going to put a link to his video and to his channel in the video description down below, so you'll be able to check it all out for yourself. Now, his video on Where Are All the Players had the contention of the reason why Gaijin currently only has, around 40 to sometimes out to 60,000 players on average. It bounces around a little bit, rather than having potentially millions of players come down to the advertising. Now, I disagree. While Gaijin's current style of advertising is most certainly not helping them, it is not the main reason behind War Thunder's current player count. And before anyone goes into this is not a video about the death of War Thunder in any way, shape or form. I don't personally think War Thunder is going to die anytime soon. This is not an attack on Gaijin, And to be perfectly honest, a lot of the reasons for War Thunder's current player count are actually things that are outside of Gaijins' control. Some of it most certainly was stuff that is inside of Gaijins' control, but there are a lot of market factors here. Now, this is something I haven't discussed on the channel personally, because I generally don't run off my resume as a general rule, but to give you some idea on where I sit in the groundings of all this, prior to doing the YouTube thing, and previously, as some of you know, I used to DJ, before my eyes started to fail when I was fresh out of high school, my first major job was actually in an advertising firm. In particular, my final job before I left the company was in market analysis. Essentially what my job was to take past marketing trends and look at current movements in the market to optimize advertising for our clients, as well as predict future potential marketing trends and optimize for them ahead of time. So I've done my fair share of work around advertising and marketing analysis before. There is a lot of stuff to unpack around why War Thunder gained a lot of popularity very quickly earlier on, and why it currently sits where it actually is. And that's what we're going to be going over today. And I'm going to warn you ahead of time, this is probably going to be a fairly long video, so grab a coffee and get yourself comfortable. So first things first, I should probably go into why I don't think advertising is actually the major problem that Gaijin has. And to begin that, we should probably go into the point that the Scottish Koala made in his video. And he was talking about how larger companies or other companies do a lot of general advertising. And I'm sure you've seen some of this general advertising before. If you've ever gone through Melbourne or any city and you've seen a bus or a tram with a massive billboard on the side of it, that is general advertising, non-targeted advertising. In fact, before we get too far into this, I probably need to explain the difference. There is two key forms of advertising we're going to be discussing here. You have general non-targeted advertising. If you've, as I've said, if you've ever been through a city and you've seen a billboard or a piece of advertising on the side of a tram or a bus, large signs attached to the side of windows, half-page or full-page ads inside of a magazine, or large ads inside of a newspaper, this is general non-targeted advertising. You then have targeted advertising. Targeted advertising is advertising that uses there's various forms to it, which I'll explain a little bit later, but they're generally aimed at a very specific subset of the population, primarily a subset that is going to be interested in that product. Targeted advertising is generally, in the past, been incredibly expensive. That's not to say that general advertising isn't expensive as well, but they're designed for two different purposes. General advertising is to create awareness around a product. Targeted advertising is intended to try and sell that product. This is a pretty rough, roundabout way of describing it, but it gets you the general idea and will suffice for the rest of this video. Now, the contention inside of the Scottish Koala's video was that Gaijin is not doing enough general advertising. This is not enough ads popping up on just random websites. There's not enough ads popping up at the front of YouTube videos. There's not enough ads being displayed inside of city areas where there might be large numbers of people that will see, say, a War Thunder ad on the side of a tram or a bus. There's a couple of reasons for this. General advertising does generate awareness of a product, but as a general result, it has a very low conversion to sale rate. And on top of that, it's not cheap. Now, I can't talk about specifics with clients that I've had in the past. I'm under permanent NDAs. I'm not allowed to discuss advertising that I dealt with, even though I'm no longer employed by the agency I work for. But I can talk about some general numbers. So if you've ever opened a magazine, just any magazine really, and you've come across one of those ads, nice glossy full-page A4 ads, takes up the entire page, that is promoting a product to you. This is a general ad. This ad is not designed to target you specifically. It is there to hopefully get the attention of somebody who may be interested in your product as they come across the ad. So it's a bit of hit and miss advertising. Not everybody who sees this ad is going to be interested in your product. Many will just turn the page, as I'm sure you have in the past. But for, let's just say, on a fairly good conversion rate for this kind of advertising, 1 in 20 that sees the ad is interested in what they see, and they want to look up what the product is to see whether or not they're interested in going further with it, perhaps purchasing it or getting involved in it. So a 1 in 20 conversion rate. Now those ads will cost you about $20,000, give or take. That was Australian dollars. So you're talking, $15,000 US for one of those ads on a per monthly issue. It can be slightly more if the magazine is more focus targeted, and we'll get into targeted advertising in just a moment, but these are not cheap. Those massive ads that you see at the sides of trams or buses or on billboards in your local capital city for something like, say, Bethesda when they've released a new game and they're trying to create a lot of awareness about it, you notice how they're only ever up for a couple of weeks? It depends on where you are and what time of the year it is and what the release schedule is like. You know, Christmas is more expensive than, say, February, for example. But in general, they range between $50,000 and $100,000 per week to have those advertisements there. And the cost also varies from city to city. For example, Melbourne and Sydney jump back and forth over which city is actually the more expensive to advertise in for this kind of advertising, or at least it did when I was there. But Adelaide was always significantly cheaper, by more than half. And the conversion rate on this general advertising is even lower again. So just remember the last time you walked through a city and you saw one of those trams or buses with that big billboard on the side, and you looked at it and sort of went, okay, that's what it's advertising there, yep, fair enough. How many times did you actually look up that product afterwards? Likewise, general advertising in web pages. Now, assuming you haven't already got an ad blocker running at this point in time and are cutting most of the ads on web pages out, when you go into a website and you're looking for a specific piece of information and you see an ad for something, how many times have you ever investigated what is on that ad? I'd wager the conversion rate for you is probably pretty low. And this is the same for everybody. These kind of ads are meant to create awareness. They're meant to generate or put the idea of a product inside of your head, so when you encounter a second form of advertising later on, it's more likely to bite you and drag you in. And it is effective in conjunction with other advertising, but the catch is it's also a type of advertising that, due to the cost, can only be sustained by extremely large companies. Have a look at the indie list of games, including incredibly popular indie games, and see how many of them actually have run this kind of advertising. I'd wager the number you're going to find is almost none, but you will find your Bethesdas doing it, you'll find your EAs doing it, you'll find your Activisions doing it. These are massive corporations with billions of dollars behind them. They can afford to do this, and this is also why, using this kind of advertising, they can take a really shit game and they can make it sell by using this exact form of marketing. But it's not something that everyone can do, and it is something that is most certainly outside of Gaijins' capability of doing. So next up we come to targeted advertising. This is a really odd one to talk about because it has changed in the last 10 years. Now, we'll start off with general targeted advertising. What this used to be is where a general advertising would be buying an ad in any magazine that would have a large publication. A targeted ad for a gaming company would be buying an ad inside of a focused gaming magazine, say PC Power Play, for example. Now, this is still actually a form of general advertising by what is currently today's standards. At the time, this was really the only option for these companies to go to, and it would put their ad for a game in front of people that were clearly gamers, because they were buying a gaming magazine. However, how many times have you bought a gaming magazine in the past and you've only been interested in a couple of things that are inside of the magazine? You may have been interested in the tech section, you know, the reviews of the new video cards that are coming out, and there may be one or two game reviews that you're interested in reading up because you're interested in the titles that are coming out. But the rest of the magazine, well, you might read it, but you're not really interested in the titles that are in there. Gaming has a very wide audience, and there are a lot of genres within the title of gaming. Now, not everybody is going to be interested in the same type of games. There are people that are interested in flight games and simming. I've got a channel full of those that may be completely uninterested in survival games, or may not like strategy games, or may not like racing games, for example. Just to put out there will be some crossover, of course, but there will be certain game genres that some people just don't enjoy. When you're buying an ad inside of a magazine, you're gambling that a large majority, or hopefully a large majority, of the potential readers of the magazine are going to be interested in your particular genre of gaming. To those people that aren't interested, your ad is completely irrelevant and is a waste of money. So, for example, I believe the current readership for PC Power Play is something like 91,000 per issue. You're buying an ad that is going in front of 91,000 people, and you're paying for that ad to be in front of 91,000 people for that month. But not every one of those 91,000 people are going to even be interested in the genre of your game. Even if they are interested in the genre, they may not be interested in the style. So there's only going to be a small segment of the potential readership that is actually going to pay any attention to the ad. Some are going to discount it outright. But this is where targeted advertising has changed, and it's changed with two things: YouTube and Twitch. As I just explained, in the past, if you wanted to target gamers, you would go to a gaming magazine, but it was still fairly general. However, on YouTube and Twitch, you have dedicated streamers and dedicated YouTubers that don't just follow gaming, but follow specific genres of gaming. So if you're a company that produces a flight game, you want to go to a channel that specifically focuses on flight gaming. If you're creating a first-person shooter, you want to go to a channel that specifically focuses on first-person shooters. And every single person who views that channel is viewing that channel because they are interested in that kind of product, and your product will appeal to all of them. It is your best bang for buck. And the really big change, in the past, targeted advertising for specific groups depending on the avenues you used to take in traditional media was incredibly expensive. If you thought the prices I gave for general advertising before were expensive, double it, and that's what targeted advertising used to cost. But with the onset of YouTube and Twitch, it is much cheaper, even free in some circumstances, to actually get your game in front of certain people. So for example, you might have a YouTuber who just picks up your game. He buys it himself, you don't have to supply it, and just starts producing video content on it and gets a viewership, and as a result, your company will generate sales on that by simply letting somebody else play the game online. Incidentally, this is why gaming companies don't generally file copyright lawsuits against YouTubers, because they like the fact that their game is being played. It's free advertising, and it's a free advertising of the form that used to be the single most expensive thing you could pick up. And then there is paid promotions. Now, we know some YouTubers do this. If they do it, you're supposed to declare it. I haven't done any paid promotions in the past. If I ever had, I would certainly declare them. But if you're a larger channel, and you have a very specific audience, and the company who is producing a product, a game for example, is liking your channel and liking the viewership that you have and liking the number of views you have, they can pay to have you play a game, or give you an offer to pay you in order to play their game and put their game in front of your audience. This might cost a couple of $1,000s in some cases. I have heard of some YouTubers in the 200 to 300,000 subscriber category charging anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000 US to play their game for a video for half an hour. Seems excessive, but just picture for a second. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, buying a glossy full-page ad in a gaming magazine, for example, could cost, well, as I said, it depends on the gaming magazine, but anywhere between $5,000 and $20,000 for a month. And a gaming magazine, will just use PC Power Play again for an example, because they've got their numbers publicly put out there, is around 91,000 viewers per month. Or you can pay a YouTuber $5,000 to have them play your game for half an hour, which shows gameplay, it shows opinion, and that YouTuber has, say, 300,000 subscribers, and 100,000 people might see it. You've spent significantly less money, targeted a larger audience, and everybody on that channel who you are now promoting in front of is already interested in your style of game. That's why you gave that offer to that channel specifically to begin with. So everyone is a potential customer. There's no hit and miss here. In terms of cost versus conversion, it is simply the best marketing you can actually get these days, and there are other companies out there that are not in the gaming world where this particular type of advertising doesn't work particularly well, that are envious as shit over the fact that gaming companies are capable of doing this. They can essentially get near free advertising targeted to audiences in a way that other types of companies out there just can't do. Now, of course, all of this leads back to Gaijin. Now, YouTube and Twitch is basically how Gaijin has been doing their advertising. It's all word of mouth. It's using YouTubers that generally started playing the game themselves and just started uploading videos and wound up with channels. Nobody paid me to start playing War Thunder. I just started uploading videos and you all came to watch, and that's what happened. Most YouTubers started exactly this way. So, how successful has this particular style of advertising been for Gaijin? Well, you would look at the number of players that are playing War Thunder and go, well, it can't be working out too well for them, but in reality, this has been working out extremely well. War Thunder initially released to the public in open beta in January of 2013, and it didn't actually release until December of 2016. At this point in time, War Thunder is over 5 years old, and it's on its way to year 6 at this moment. Now, in January of 2016, when War Thunder came up for its final release, as part of their marketing, they did a little bit of an image with a whole bunch of stats of where War Thunder was up to in that very moment, and I've got that image for you right here. Now, this particular image, if we zoom in and have a little bit of a look, as you can see, War Thunder is claiming 15 million players on release in December 2016. Now, we know this is not exactly true. We have never seen that many players in-game, and this is actually a bit of a marketing spin. Pretty much anybody who runs an MMO-style game with a large player base does this. What they're actually saying is at this point, they have over 15 million unique accounts created for their game. And I'll bring this up a second time. This was in December 2016, specifically the 22nd of December 2016, this image was released. Now, if you look at the growth of the game over time, if there were 15 million players plus, or 15 million unique accounts plus, at the end of 2016, by now March 2018, we are going to be looking at somewhere between 18 and 20 million accounts created under that growth rate. And that's assuming that things have slowed down a little bit as the game has gotten older. Now, there is one last thing I need to go into here before we run the final numbers. The job of advertising isn't to sustain your player base. This is an important thing you need to understand. The job of advertising is to notify potential players that the game exists and get them to the front door. Either get them creating an account or get them, in the case of a buy-to-play game, get them to buy the game. Once you've managed to do that, the advertising has done its job. From there, it is up to the game itself and the community to actually keep these players in. The advertising will get you the players. The game needs to keep them. And this is where the problem actually shows up. Clearly, the advertising is getting people to the front door. At this point in time, more than 15 million. I would wager probably close to 18 to 20 as I mentioned, but we're just going to play with 15 million because this is the number that Gaijin has given us in this document, or this image, from 2016. But the maximum number of concurrent players that we are seeing at any given time is around 60,000. So if we ignore the fact that this image was released in December of 2016, and ignore the fact that there has been over a year since this image came out, and a year's worth of potential new accounts created, and just work with that 15 million account number that Gaijin has given us, currently at absolute peak, there is only 0.4% of the total number of players who have ever created a War Thunder account playing concurrently. And this is how you know that the problem isn't the advertising. Yes, Gaijin could definitely do its advertising better, and potentially this advertising would appeal to a larger audience and could drag more people in. However, the problem isn't that the game isn't getting out there, the problem is that Gaijin's rate of conversion between somebody creating an account and having a look at the game and then continuing to play the game is actually incredibly low. 0.4%, well, it's actually not as bad as it sounds. 0.4% is low, and it should be better than that. But if you do a comparison against World of Tanks over the US, EU, and RU servers combined gets on average concurrent players around the 850 to 900,000 player mark currently. If you compare that against the 110 million unique accounts that have been created for World of Tanks, you actually get around 0.8%. So it's still less than 1% of players concurrently, which was what you would expect at any given time, but War Thunders is still half of what World of Tanks is. So, to answer the question that was put forward by the Scottish Koala in his video, where are all the players? Well, they're playing other games, and it's not because they're unaware that War Thunder exists. They've seen the game, they've created an account, they've potentially played a few matches, they've just decided not to continue, or they're players that have been playing for a very long time that have just chosen to move on. And there could be a multitude of reasons as to why. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to speculate in the comment section of this video as to why these people aren't continuing to play. But that is where the core problem is. It's not that people don't know the game exists. The advertising that Gaijin is currently doing, on top of being cost effective, is most certainly working. They're just not turning enough of those prospective players into long-term players. And no amount of advertising is actually going to change that. That's a problem that needs to be addressed before any advertising can expand the game. And with the game approaching 6 years at this point, well, in all honesty, Gaijins' window to actually expand the game in this manner may have already closed. Now, there is one last thing I'll say before everyone starts freaking the fuck out in my comment section. War Thunder is not dying. If you take a look at the concurrent players from not too long ago, you'll actually find it was around 40 to 50. Concurrent players now seems to be around the 60 mark, probably heading towards 70, which means War Thunder is slowly converting more players at a higher rate over time, and I strongly suspect it is converting players at a higher rate than new accounts are currently being created. The game is growing, it's just growing very, very slowly. Which again, as I said before, doesn't really surprise me when you consider it's a 6-year-old game. In my personal opinion, being somebody who's been around aviation and simulation type games for some time, these games have always been a niche audience, and I strongly suspect War Thunder never had the capability to be one of those monstrously huge games to begin with, not starting out with a primary aviation focus and still sort of continuing to have a primary aviation focus now, despite the tanks tech trees being in place. But I do agree that it could be bigger than it was now, if the right things had been done. But the problem was never a case of people finding out about War Thunder. The problem was a case of War Thunder not being able to keep enough people in the game. Do remember, in 2014, during the open beta test and release of War Thunder Ground Forces into the live community, at that point, War Thunder had over 100,000 concurrent players on average, and then they all left. Fixing player retention is the fix for War Thunder's player-based problems. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching. I do have a couple more things to put on here at the end in the spirit of a video that's largely about advertising. As I'm sure you've seen on some of my Surviving Mars videos, I have recently picked up a partnership with Fanatical. Fanatical is a Steam key selling site. I did a lot of research into these guys before I actually agreed to partner with them. Basically, I wanted to know if they were like Humble Bundle, who is fantastic, or if they were like G2A, who are awful and horrible, and I wouldn't recommend anybody even go to their website. Turns out they are thankfully sitting right alongside Humble Bundle in terms of quality. Their keys are all sourced direct from the publishers. They manage to match Steam on pretty much every single sale, and often manage to put additional discounts on top of that as well. So if you're looking to pick up anything on Steam, I'll put a link in the video description below for this. Feel free to jump over using my code if you would like to help out the channel and have a look at the games there. If the games aren't on any kind of a discount that's going to be any advantage to you, of course, don't waste your money there. But if they've got a deal on where you can save a little bit of cash, hey, every single dollar counts these days, so hopefully you can save a little bit of money and it helps the channel out as a bit of a bonus. I'm also likely to be picking up Audible again for a couple of videos sometime in the near future, so I'll see how that works out. I don't have any details beyond that at this point in time, just giving you a short warning ahead of time. Anything else that's going on? My historical video series, which seems to have sort of stalled, hasn't actually stalled. I'm working on something at the moment. I'm hoping to have it up in the next few days. Obviously, some of the stuff that's been going on in the real world at the moment has been slowing me up, and yeah, it's been a little busy on this end, but hopefully I'll have everything else sorted out soon enough. In terms of game updates, really, there's not a lot to talk about at this point in time. I've sort of already started to cover the stuff that's going on with IL-2. Obviously, War Thunder is being covered, and I will be putting together something for DCS for its own video very, very, very shortly. Just dragging together a few updates on the goings-on with various developments in that particular area. Anyways, that's really all there is to say here. I hope you found the video somewhat interesting. Hope you don't mind me rambling on too long, and I hope you grabbed a coffee before I started. Anyways, ladies and gents, until next time, remember to click that like button, share and subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, take care.